I'm going to show you how to calculate your mean, your standard deviation, find a new mean, and then do some graphing. I know you all were having some trouble with the data, graphing the data, maybe even understanding why we would do a standard deviation. So hopefully this video can help you and you can look back on it and re-watch it if you need to. So I've got some data here from one of our classes. This was the enzyme data we're going to work with today. Just from one class, it was 6 groups. So our groups are over here. These were the concentrations of the enzyme. So the first thing we need to do is look at our data. And as you can see in the data, there are some strange looking values. They look out of the ordinary from some of the other values. And then we have some columns where the data is actually pretty close together, with maybe one example being to the contrary. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and take our mean to take a look at that. So I'm on an iMac, so it's a little bit different from a Windows machine, but you should have relatively the same buttons around on your desktop. So if you come up to the formula icon, click average, make sure you highlight the data you're interested in and push enter. Once you have your mean, you can copy that and paste it across, and it'll automatically do it for the other columns. So in looking at our mean, we can see that some of the values are not very far away from the mean, and some of the values are very far away from the mean. So if we want to possibly exclude any data points, we've got to go ahead and do a statistical test of our data, and that gives us a more legitimate reason for why we would want to exclude data points, and that gives us more of a quantitative reason to do it too. So we're going to use standard deviation, which is not the best way, but it's a good way for our purposes. So you're going to want to go ahead and click on the cell. I just made a row that says standard deviation. Come up to your formula bar, and standard deviation is not here, so we've got to go to more functions and search for it. Mine is coming up over here because I've already searched for it. So I'm going to double click on that. You can search and then double click. Highlight your data. Don't include your mean, just groups 1 through 6. Press enter and you've got your standard deviation. I'll do that again. So you start with an empty box, empty cell, and then double click on standard deviation, and then highlight your groups you're interested in. Copy that, and you can just copy it and paste it across, and that gives you your standard deviation for the rest of them. Now remember, this is how far our data is away from the mean, and you can see that this one has a pretty big spread away from the mean, but these don't. These are a little bit closer to the mean. They don't deviate as much from the mean. So we could be a little bit more confident in this data than we can with this group of data over here. So in order to create a range of what we're willing to accept in terms of spread in our data, we're going to use mean plus standard deviation and mean minus the standard deviation to pick out points that fall outside of that range so we don't have to use them. So when I do a formula in Excel, I can start it by pressing a plus sign. And then what I want to do is highlight my mean, and I want to add that to my standard deviation. So I push a plus, a plus sign, and then I want to highlight the cell I want to add it to, which is the actual numbers, not the words. And I've got my standard deviation plus the mean, and I can copy and paste that across. And then if I want my mean minus the standard deviation, I go ahead and put the plus sign, select my mean, but now minus, and then select standard deviation. And that's going to give me that, and I can copy and paste that across as well. Now, what I can do is I can use this as a range to figure out if data points fall above or below my range. So I'm looking for points above 24.73. So here's a point there, and I like to highlight them so I can tell the difference. Nothing else is above that, so I can look at 7.61 and see if anything falls below that. And of course this one does. So those are 2 points I may be able to exclude. Again, and I'll just go through the table and you can follow along as I exclude points. So 12.12, 6.92, 9.52, 4.87, 6.73, 4.42, and 6.09, so there's nothing there, and then 3.72 we've got here. So these are the data points that fall outside of our range. So now to create a new mean, a better mean hopefully, we have to only add up and take the mean of the points that are left over. Now on a Windows machine, you can simply click a cell and click other cells to do the average. On a Mac, I can't do that. So I'll show you what I'll do on the Mac, but on your machine, you would just simply find your average. So click on the formula for average, double click, and you would highlight the first cell and then hold down the control button and then highlight other cells, hit enter, and it will give you the mean of only those cells you've highlighted. On the Mac, I've got to do an extra step. So I've got to add cells to this, and then I can press enter. Now I'll just do the rest. You can follow along. So So now I've got my new mean down here. And so we can see that our new means look a little bit different from our old mean up here. And this is supposedly giving us a better quality of our data. And so if we want to graph that data, then we can then proceed to do a line graph.